Hello, people of the internet. So, I had a little hypothesis, and the hypothesis was, could the universe become habitable after heat death? Now, I should explain what I mean by become habitable, and keep in mind that this is a hypothesis. Not only is this a hypothesis, it's a hypothesis from someone who I would consider scientifically minded, but not a scientist. I would say as a person, I think like a scientist, but I'm not smart enough to be one. But yeah, so keep in mind that there could be key points of information I'm missing in making this hypothesis. But even then, it's still a fun idea. So, what the hypothesis is. So, I'll explain real quick things about the heat death and stuff. And about what I mean. So, the heat death. So, the universe could end in one of three ways. And it depends entirely on the shape of the universe. And I think, although I could be wrong, that the consensus is that our universe is a flat universe. Just because I've already brought this up, I'm going to explain the three different ways in which they would end. So, there are three types of universes: flat, open, and closed. A flat universe is flat, as the name implies. An open universe is curved, but it curves like kind of like a saddle. But it doesn't curve around itself, it's just curved. So, and then a closed universe is one that curves around itself to essentially be a sphere. So, I'll start with there's the way a closed universe would end, or could end, is, so dark energy and gravity are two contrasting forces. Gravity is what pulls things toward the center of mass, and, towards massive objects. The more mass, the stronger the gravity, while dark energy is what pulls things away from that center. So if one were to increase or decrease, so think of it like a battle. If one side were to increase or decrease, then the entire tide would change. So the way a closed universe would end would be that dark energy could deplete and gravity would pull things together. And eventually that universe would collapse. And that's how it would end. And then it would, and then it could, of course, re-expand into another universe. What exactly that would mean depends on when it would deplete. Because, for example, the Quarksgazot video, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, that I've heard this from, said that stars would be cooked from the outside as the universe collapses because heat. I should also bring this up since heat is an important part of my theory, or my hypothesis. Not a theory. It's not a theory, and it likely never will be, but it's a hypothesis because I'm using the scientific words here, not the colloquial usages of these words. Anyway, so as the universe expanded in the Big Bang, heat was able to spread. So if it were to collapse, heat would then lose area to spread, so it would be condensed into one area and become hot. That's why, or hotter, which is why a lot of the times people will describe the singularity as having infinite density and infinite heat. Because infinite heat is, would realistically be that, would be a property if heat is, because heat is a thing, while cold is the absence of heat. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say with that element. I'm I'm sorry about, like, my brain being kind of scattered, but this is kind of the best I can do when I don't have a script. I could write one, but I don't really feel like it. But yeah, so then there's the way that a open universe would end, which is that it would continue expanding, and then eventually the opposite would happen, where dark energy could increase. And then that expansion would be so strong that gravity wouldn't be able to keep things together. And eventually, things would get torn apart. Because, gravity wouldn't be strong enough to keep them together because dark energy would be stronger than gravity. The one relevant to this discussion is a flat universe, which would end in what's called a big freeze or a heat death. It's more commonly called a heat death, but I've seen it be called the big freeze. Although only in the Corkscazot video I've seen on this specific topic. I've done more research than the Corkscazot video. But still, that's where I got that's where I got this like idea from. Well, it didn't mention this, but I kind of came up with it after thinking about that idea. So what would happen is it would expand, and then eventually stars would die because they would just age and die. And then, so like the proto-star objects, things that haven't become a star yet, will live their lifetime, become a star. So like, for example, our star will become a red giant. It'll die and become a red giant. Then that red giant will die and become a white dwarf. Then that white dwarf will die and become a black dwarf. Eventually, that black dwarf will die. And if it doesn't become anything after it becomes a black dwarf, then it's done. That activity has ceased. So think of it like the universe is like the human body. It ages over time. As things change, they start to decay because it starts to get older. And that's just that aging process happening. That's what the heat death is. So the reason my hypothesis is what it is, what made me think of it was the heat and the way habitable zones work. Now, this could be done mathematically to either prove or disprove my hypothesis if you really wanted, which is one of the reasons I'm bringing this up, is because a mathematician could probably figure this out. But, so when you have, here's an analogy to explain why I came up with this. So if you have a glass of water and you put ice cubes in the water, the heat is going to be in the areas where the ice cubes are not. And then the cold or lack of heat is going to be in the ice cubes, right? The heat, and then, but as those ice cubes melt, over time, the ice will go from cold water to, from ice to cold water to lukewarm water, because the heat in the water will equalize and it'll just kind of all be in one area. So that's what I was thinking was, after the heat death of the universe, could the heat in the universe, like after it spreads out and equalizes, after, all the stars are dead and all the black holes are dead, all the, and stuff like that, could the heat equalize and the universe itself become a habitable zone because the heat has equalized? And if the answer is no, how long would that take? And if it would take a while, could life form before it equalizes in areas where it would just be warmer still from stars and stuff existing? Although I doubt it would be there for long enough for life to form before it equalizes if it can't form after it does. Could life form while the heat is equalizing, and could life form after it does? That's what my hypothesis is life can form might be able to form after heat equalizes after the heat death. But one of the issues is this hypothesis is not really falsifiable because it's about the far, far future. Well, it's falsifiable, just not in ways that most people would be able to do. As I just said, a mathematician could falsify this. All you'd have to do is know how much heat is required for a habitable zone, and then, how much heat makes a habitable zone, and then how much heat, would the, base level of heat in the universe be if it were all, equalized, which, well, I guess, no, that kind of isn't falsifiable, isn't it? I'm kind of thinking about it, and it really isn't falsifiable. But I don't know. Maybe it is. If it is, then that would be great, because if it's falsified, then I would be happy to know that not only are my hypotheses being taken seriously, but also to know that that isn't accurate. And if whoever tells me, and if they tell me why, and it changes my mind, then I'd be happy to know why that's false. Because then if anyone else comes up with it, I can explain why it's not true. But, that's just my idea. Could, after the heat equalizes, after the heat death of the universe, could the universe itself be a habitable zone? If not, why? And then, yeah, if not, why? That's, I guess, really the only question I have. So, well, see you in my next video, probably. Well, no, I won't see you. You'll see me. Little update on the video that I've been talking about for a while, because I still intend on making it. The Islam Mormonism compare contrast video. I've just kind of got bored of doing it, like what I said in my last video. I also was watching some shows and stuff, so that was kind of distracting me. But now I've finished all the shows I was watching, so that's not slowing me down anymore. So it should get done faster than it was before. If you were wondering what shows I was watching Regular Show and The Amazing World of Gumball. Because I grew up with Disney Channel, so I was really fascinated with the Cartoon Network shows, because I didn't see any of them. I've seen parts of them, but I grew up with Disney Channel, so I watched those, and wow. It's weird going from the, because with Disney, it's they have these barriers that they're not allowed to cross, but the people that are, think about it like this. So there's barriers that Disney Channel has for what is kid-friendly and what isn't, and there's the same thing for Cartoon Network. But that barrier is more strict with Disney Channel than it is for Cartoon Network, which is why I think Cartoon Network, why I prefer the two now that I've seen some shows on Cartoon Network. But yeah, so now that I've finished those shows, I should be able to get back to my studies, my theology studies, learning about Mormon theology, so I can compare and contrast it with Muslim theology. So yeah. Think of it like Gary Habermas's book. I'll constantly bring it up, but it'll never come into existence. No, don't think of it like that. Well, think of it like that in that it'll take a while to happen. So long, in fact, that you'll think I'm not gonna make it, but I'll still make it. Because even though Gary Habermas is a dumbass and a liar, he's not a liar about whether he'll do a thing. And I don't want to be a liar about whether I'll do the things I say I'll do. So, I don't want to be a liar at all, but, that's kind of part of my principles as well. It's just I don't want to be a liar in that regard. But yeah, so see ya, I guess.